This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Connor O'Gara, national columnist from Saturday Down South. Usually get his thoughts on what happened over the weekend and what's going to happen in the next week. But how about something that happened today? Connor O'Gara, Bryan Harsin, no longer the football coach at Auburn University. And you knew it would take them hire an athletic director for it to happen first, and I guess they've done both things today.
Man, what a surprising way to start off a Monday. I mean, I'll be honest. I always expect these coaching changes to happen on a Sunday when an athletic director, maybe university president, depending on if there's an athletic director actually employed, when they have a chance to be able to talk with their buddies afterwards on Saturday, and they're like, yeah, it's not working. And then they wait until Sunday. They're like, we'll let him sleep on it. And then they make the announcement on Sunday. But we got a full 2 days after Auburn played a football game. Arkansas, I guess, put the nail in the coffin then for the Bryan Harsin era.
They really did. They definitely did. And now they play against a guy who's going to be mentioned as maybe a top candidate for the job with Liberty and Hugh Freeze coming in this weekend. Do you think Freeze is a fit there? He's beaten Nick Saban a couple of times at Ole Miss. There is the feeling that there might have been like a soft blackball of him, but that was a few years ago. You think that's a fit?
Yeah, I do. He wouldn't be my first choice, but he would absolutely be up there. And we don't know the number that Auburn would have to pay to get him out of that contract, which, by the way, not a coincidence that Hugh Freeze agrees to an 8-year contract worth $40 million guaranteed money. That's the result of him being rumored for these SEC jobs. And, of course, everybody knows that he's got an SEC audition or game, I guess, an SEC game coming up this weekend. But that to me would make sense because, obviously, at Ole Miss, his undoing is now, I think, looked at in a different way, at least in terms of the stuff with recruiting and the way that played out in an NIL era in which we're a bit numb to that. You don't necessarily have to deal with the same sort of hurdles from that standpoint. I think the statute of limitations is up with the unofficial ban that Greg Sankey kind of had on him with the SEC. But I do think that there would be obviously a fit there, somebody that's won in the division, in the toughest division in sports. And I think that would make a lot of sense from Auburn's standpoint, even without knowing what that number would be to buy him out.
Connor, Raheem Sanders just keeps getting better and better each week, it seems like. Does he have to keep doing what he's doing? Will he be an all-SEC first-team back if, let's say, Arkansas was to they have 3 SEC games left. Let's say they only went 1 and 2. Do they have to win enough games, or has he solidified himself as being one of those all-conference running backs this year?
Yeah, I think if he stays healthy, he's got it, man. Like, he's been incredible. He just has. And look, I had a moment of realization over the weekend when I was breaking down his numbers for a 13-game pace, and I realized that he would be in between Darren McFadden's 2006 and 2007 seasons, which I don't say that lightly, and I understand it's a different era, it's a totally different scheme. You call more plays, obviously, with the up-tempo style. I get all those things, but to me, you just watch this guy explode in these games, and you realize how much of a difference maker he truly is. I mean, Auburn did not have a chance to defend him, and that's why I liked Arkansas going into that game. But you see the home run playability. To me, that's just kind of what makes this such a game changer. And I was one of those guys talking about Dominique Johnson coming into this year. He was on my all bang the drum team, and I was ready for him to kind of take that next step. And unfortunately, injuries have obviously cut his season short. But it hasn't really mattered for this rushing attack with how good Rocket has been kind of for the first time in his football life since he was a freshman in high school, in which he's like a featured running back. So it's crazy to think about how quickly he has taken that next step. There is no doubt in my mind that he is an all-SEC guy. The only thing that can kind of get in the way of that happening at this point to me is if he gets hurt.
Now, Tennessee, I thought they'd beat Kentucky. I did not expect to see a giant blowout like that. I know Levis had a terrible game. Kentucky could not establish the run. I know Tennessee's got this great offense, and they got Cedric Tillman back, and Hooker is just having an all-world sort of a season. I didn't appreciate how good their defense can be. And really, you go into this Tennessee-Georgia game this weekend, and I mean, I think Tennessee's got a real shot at this. I mean, that is a high-flying attack, and I think Georgia's really good, but I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee came out of there with a win.
I've been saying since July that Tennessee was going to beat Georgia in Athens. So this isn't necessarily news to me. What was news to me was watching this defense, how prepared they looked against Kentucky. That was incredible. I thought that game was going to be back and forth. We're going to have a shootout. And instead, it's a game in which Tennessee looks like the scariest team in college football. They played such a complete game, and the way that their defensive backs took so much offense to all the talk about their number 30 pass defense, which, if you just look at it on the surface, you would say, yes, that's really bad. You need to be better. If you're going to win a national championship, you're going to win an SEC championship, do all those things. But if you actually kind of look a little bit deeper, you realize, well, you can be a team like that if you are going to be efficient against the pass, which they are. They're now top half in the country in terms of pass efficiency defense. They also have a top 10 run defense. You can't run the ball on this team. You need to ask Chris Rodriguez, who, for my money, is one of the 10 best backs in all of college football. He couldn't do anything against Tennessee. So I look at this team, and the more and more I see them, man, I realize this is not just some flash in the pan. This isn't getting lucky. I don't think it feels like 98 either. Like, this is a really good football team, and I absolutely believe that they're going to go into Georgia and they're going to pull off another upset and continue on this path to a really, really special season.
Is this Saturday's game a de facto college football playoff game with Georgia and Tennessee?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I think the winner of this game should now feel like, barring a stunning upset, like it would have to be similar to Michigan State when Michigan State beat Ohio State to stay undefeated. They lost to Nebraska first. I can't remember, but whatever the case was, Michigan State had that really bad loss to Nebraska, which I want to say was after they beat Ohio State, the preseason number 1. And then it was like, oh, well, now obviously they're going to have to fight for their life in the Big Ten championship. I still think that the winner of this game should basically have a playoff spot. I do. I think they're going to have the resume. The quality wins are absolutely there. I mean, you can make the case that Tennessee and Georgia each have the 2 best wins in the country right now. With how well that Oregon win has aged, man, I was there week 1, and the whooping that Georgia put on that Oregon team, which has just been a totally different squad since that week 1 matchup. I continue to be impressed that Georgia was as dominant as it was, and then obviously Tennessee beating Alabama. That always ages well. So, yeah, I think that they should be playing for a playoff spot, and who knows, maybe the loser of this game is sitting pretty if you don't have to go to the SEC championship and possibly face Alabama.
Yeah, speaking of Alabama, you got that Alabama at LSU night game. Is there any buzz, any chance LSU, they essentially could control their destiny too? If they beat Bama and won out, they could be representing the SEC West there. Any chance you see LSU able to knock off Bama?
I really would like to say yes, because for the sake of entertainment, I mean, every time Alabama loses a game, it's the Michael Scott gif. Oh my gosh, it's happening. The fire drill. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. But if Alabama were to lose a second regular season game, something that hasn't happened with them being fully healthy since 2010, because 2019 is a little bit different when Tua has the hip injury, Mac Jones comes in the Iron Bowl. But I think that LSU is playing its best football, and they're playing with house money. And that's the good thing. You've had 2 weeks to prepare for this matchup after Jaden Daniels was an unbelievable quarterback for 2 games that I think a lot of people had doubt. And instead, you see this offense turning the corner. So what does that look like against Alabama? Can they actually keep moving the ball down the field and getting those receivers involved, despite the fact that the pass rush is going to be there for Alabama? To me, that's the trickier question. And I think that Bryce Young reminds everybody that, in my opinion, he's still the best offensive player in America. And I think he has one of those days against a really good LSU defense that can get after him, especially with the emerging Harold Perkins. But I think Alabama is able to go into Death Valley and win that game by 2 touchdowns.
Are we ready to put Clemson in the playoff yet? The poll comes out tomorrow, and after their win over Syracuse, they have the bye, 4 games left at Notre Dame. Maybe Notre Dame can surprise them, but I don't think Louisville or Miami or South Carolina will. And you're looking at the undefeated teams that are left here. Georgia, Tennessee, so 2 out of the SEC. Ohio State, Michigan, 2 out of the Big Ten. But Clemson and TCU are the other 2 undefeated teams. And, man, would there be a situation where, like, an undefeated TCU gets left out of the playoff?
No.
They haven't been a dominant undefeated team, but wins are wins.
Look, that won't happen. They're going to leave an undefeated Power 5 team out of the playoff. And for all the talk about, like, what really is TCU, what really is Clemson, in terms of wins against Power 5 teams with winning records, as it stands, if you look at the standings right now, these teams have winning records. Clemson's got 4 of those. TCU's got 4 of those. Nobody else that's in playoff contention has 4. That's the crazy thing that's kind of overlooked with their resume. If you want to look at wins against current AP top 25 teams, Clemson's got the most of them with 3. Nobody else has 3. Tennessee's got 2. TCU also has 2, and then everybody else is 1 or 0. So to me, yeah, I could look at that. I could make any argument I want for Clemson because you could also say, well, their best win is at Wake Forest, double overtime, a Wake Forest team that maybe is going to be unranked, in the first playoff poll or something like that. Like their 3 wins against ranked teams are teams that are between 20 and 22 in the AP poll. So I think you can make any argument you want about Clemson. I don't think they're one of the best 4 teams in college football. I don't. I think they'll have an absolute path to be able to get there. If they're a 1-loss team, they might need a little bit of help, depending on the way that things play out with Michigan and Ohio State, both of whom could very likely be undefeated going into that game to close out the regular season. And then similar to what we could see play out in the SEC East, 1-loss team is kind of left on the outside of a conference championship with still a favorable path to make the playoffs. So, yeah, it's going to get crazy. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But I think Clemson and TCU have a slightly better resume than people realize.
Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.